Wow, at home, a 29-game winning streak now.
For the Tigers at home.
It's could we seriously call that a 100% win?
Yeah.
Pretty much. I mean,
well,
the stats prove it, right?
Well, let me tell you something, Dan. For the next 3 games, if the Tigers were to win every time, they will host not only the first round of the playoffs, but they will host the Southern California championship game to go along with the state championship game. The road to the state championship will go through Riverside, California.
Wow, it's very fortunate, and I would say Riverside's very lucky to be going through this.
Yeah.
I mean, with the chance, like you said, to host the Southern California Championship and the California State Championship here at Wheelock Stadium. That means so much.
That means
to this team.
everything for Riverside, and they will have to face off if they were to get that far. They would have to face the state champions or the Northern California champions. They would have to travel, of course, during finals week. Again, I mentioned these are students to go along with athletes, of course. They would have to, during finals week, force whoever wins the North to travel some 300, 400 miles south to Wheelock Stadium.
But to be blunt, that's what separates the boys from the men. It's the men that take care of work, and it's the boys that fall out of place. And let's see if these guys got the fortitude to create a championship team here.
Well, for the meantime, the only thing that we know is that the Tigers have pulled off 7 consecutive wins. And before we get going here with next week's ball games, Dan, your thoughts about a quarterback change, a coach that was questioned, lots of scrutiny following 2 consecutive disheartening losses, and a win in overtime and then a loss to Grossmont, and then, a quarterback that has really resurrected this season.
Well, if I'm one of the critics now, I'm a believer. Coach Tom Kraft has stuck to his game plan. I mean, a lot of scrutiny, just like you said, because he didn't necessarily have a quarterback towards the mid part of the season.
Remember
Game 4, Game 5, it was still questionable. Should Kelly Helinski be in there? Is what we questioned. They tried Vernala. That was a bust. And finally Nicholas King emerged as the savior, I would say, of the season. We could honestly go up to Nicholas King and have him answer that question, and I bet he would answer it in a very modest, very humble
that's the way that he is. Yeah. But for the meantime, Nicholas King has put the Tigers not only into the playoffs, not only into the National Central Conference Championship books, but as the number 1 seed in the Southern California playoffs to go along with, according to the California polls, as the number 1 team in the state. A phenomenal mark for a ball club that many pegged to start conference play as not even the best in their own division.
Riverside, just a great all-around team, clinching their 2nd consecutive National Central League title last week. Here, clinching their 9th victory of the season, going undefeated in league play. It just goes to show how powerful this team can be. And let's get into what they did tonight. I mean, it was shaky at the beginning. A little shaky midway through, and then finally at the end is when the defense, as usual, right on schedule, right on the 4th quarter is when they step up and make the most plays, and the most important plays at that.
Absolutely. This is a team that we're going to go ahead and get statistics, but just a real quick mention before we'll get you the recap of the entire ball game tonight to go along with the 2014 season. Coming up next week, the Tigers will take on Ventura as the Pirates finished 6-4, including a very impressive 5-1 league play out of the National Southern Conference. Meanwhile, the other game out of the South will be either Mount Sac or Long Beach. They will claim the number 2 seed according to the polls, which will be extremely entertaining to watch. That will come out on Monday afternoon. They will take on Fullerton College, who won the National Northern Conference. Then out of the North, round number 1 of the playoffs will be, I believe, according to current standings, San Francisco will clash against Butte College, who did lose today by 1 to Siskiyous College, who is now 6-4 on the year. They will close out with no playoff appearance as well, but a bowl game appearance here next week. Meanwhile, San Mateo will clash against American River on the road. Now to this game. Statistics from tonight's ball game where the Tigers were outgained in first downs in total yardage. Of course, passing was heavily in favor of Citrus. Meanwhile, you look at the turnover differential, Dan, and that's really what made the difference.
It was. Winning the turnover ball game always will win games. I don't care who you are or what you've done during the season. If you cause turnovers, your chances of winning are super high, off the charts.
Well, the other thing is that really gets you into position to win is having guys that really don't even see the field come in and make an impact. And your thoughts about Clovis North product Brock Carmen, second only behind Fangatua today, who was a monster in the backfield, had a sack and a half. Brock Carmen, 7 tackles today, including 1 for loss, and was a monster down in run support.
Wow. Who would have known? I mean, he hasn't played since when?
He hasn't played since the Fullerton game.
There you go.
That was before conference play really even got going.
It just goes to show how many playmakers this Riverside defense has. A Ray Ford, a guy who usually is playing. He's the number 2 cornerback here, stepping up as the number 1 because Trayshawn Broughton not playing because of academic issues.
And he's part of a duo that really may not see the field next week, Denzel Foster. We'll get to him a little bit later. Meanwhile, Tigers win 20-14, but it was ugly at the beginning as Riverside did pull off 10 unanswered points before Citrus was able to counter right before the half on a 48-yard pass completion from Cutbirth to Smith that got the scoring finance going for Citrus College. They led 14-10 at the break. Into the third quarter, right before the end, it was a real ugly third quarter for those offenses, but on a 9-play, 90-yard drive for the Tigers, they were able to take the lead on a Nicholas King 6-yard touchdown run. Then they, after a field goal to start the fourth by Jimmy Camacho, it was Citrus who had 2 opportunities. One midway through the fourth where they traveled from inside their own 20 down to the Riverside 5 before Cutbirth throws a pick. Then after a 3-and-out, they have another opportunity. Cutbirth started at his own 5. He was near a first down, chucked it deep on 4th and 6, and was intercepted by Ray Ford. Your thoughts about tonight's ball game? And we'll all start, of course, with 2 interceptions by Ford. I mean, phenomenal.
It was, and wow, to have 2 shutdown corners on your team, it means you're going to be lights out in a type of sport where passing dominates now.
Yeah.
To have 2 shutdown cornerbacks means so much.
Well, they held listen, one of those shutdown corners you mentioned was not in. Dayhone Wise and Cortland Fort were among the best defensive backs for the Tigers today. They barely even saw time as a backup cornerback here this season, but stepped in and played masterfully. 20-14, Tigers end up winning this ball game and held the number 1 quarterback in the history of Citrus College to 26 of 55. That'll be 45% completions for Larry Cutbirth for a touchdown, 4 interceptions, and a quarterback rating of about 40. 335 yards, though,
wow.
Not half bad. But before we get back going to that, I would like to touch real quick on the number 1 quarterback in the history of Citrus College, Larry Cutbirth, who I think will be well on his way to a Division I school. And with his performance today, he officially, well, just kidding. It's just like the Citrus College Owls today.
Just short, huh?
Just short of 5,000 yards. You'll end up with 4,961 yards today.
Still impressive.
Still very impressive. And not to mention 45 passing touchdowns in the career of Larry Cutbirth, where it all started out of Etiwanda High School, a redshirt sophomore, and he will end the year with more yards, completions, touchdowns than any other quarterback in the history of Citrus College. That dates back over 90 years.
We got to look back at all his stats, going from his freshman year all the way to his varsity year at Etiwanda, and just total up his total yardage. It's got to be insane.
It's got to be ridiculous. And what's amazing about Larry Cutbirth is that he this season has more yards, more completions, and more touchdowns on the road, which explains to me one thing, that he is not fazed by the spotlight and by the road atmosphere. And let me tell you something, that Riverside crowd was rocking tonight.
It was. I mean, they always show up to play.
They do.
Riverside crowd.
The fans just as much as the players. But I would put my player of the game honors. Understandably, he didn't finish the ball game, but Denzel Foster ran 17 times for 118 yards and literally willed the Tigers back into that game when they trailed by 4. That'll be 7 yards a pop for the man out of JW North, Denzel Foster.
Great
and that'll
point.
put him this season at 919 yards rushing to go along with 10 total touchdowns.
He should go over. He does have a great chance to go over 1,500 yards, totaling all the yards he'll get in the playoffs if he goes deep.
Given that we go that far. Yeah. And Foster is a mere 200 yards away from eclipsing 2,000 in the history of his Tigers career. To go along with other numbers, Citrus did play masterfully well, led, of course, by 7 catches for $106 out of the 5'7" sophomore Patrick Smith, also another man who eclipsed 100 yards receiving, 5 for 20 or 120 that is out of Errol Romney. That's been phenomenal for them. But boy, you take a look at the great, then the bad. The Tigers held Citrus 22 carries for 22 yards rushing tonight.
Wow. That's been the story all year for Citrus. It's a team that's heavily pass favoriting. But and when they go to the run, they're not going to get much. But here in this ball game, they stuck it out. I was surprised that they stuck out with the run that long. But it just goes to show that, hey, everyone needs to play and step up.
That's right. Yeah, that's why you play these games, including a season finale. Citrus College will finish the year at 3-7, including only 2-4 in conference play, and they lose their final 5 games to close out the year with another losing record and are bowl ineligible despite playing extremely tough against the number 1 team in the state of California. The Tigers, you mentioned their great run defense. They will give up only 92 yards rushing per game over the course of the year. That'll be number 1 in the conference, top 10 in California. Amazing. There are 70 teams in junior college.
That's amazing for sure. Hey, you picked your player of the game. You picked Denzel Foster, who rushed for 118 yards on 17 carries. Did get pulled out of the game because of an injury. We'll find out more about that during a week, and we'll see if he gets to play next week. But my player of the game, it has to go to Ray Ford. The guy,
of course.
He led this defense big time. He got up to 4 deflections, 2 interceptions, and so many other more.
But both of them were critical. Yeah. Both interceptions, including the one that sealed the game. We're going to go ahead and make this one a real quick final. Of course, Citrus College now in the rearview mirror. Next week we take on Ventura College. Some of the key notables here for Ventura to go along with their statistics that aren't notably well. This is the number 1 team in the state of California with a plus 18 turnover differential.
Wow.
So you win the turnover battle tonight, but can you win it next week? Ventura is in your place coming up in 7 days.
Well, because of that, because they're coming here to Wheelock Stadium, I have to go on the side of Riverside again. This is a team that isn't all that experienced in the playoffs. It's noted here that it's only their 4th playoff appearance, so that it says a lot about a team. And only being 6-4 and being allowed into the playoffs, finishing league play 5-1.
They did win the conference, but I get you. 6-4 Ventura travels to 9-1 Riverside, the number 1 team, according to the polls in the state.
Not many people like to compare opponents. Like tonight, Ventura took on Bakersfield. Riverside destroyed Bakersfield in the first game of the season.
Meanwhile, Bakersfield beat them.
Yeah, and hey, not a lot of there's a bunch of guys out there who don't like to compare teams, similar teams that they've played together or the same opponent.
Because really, you can turn that on its head and say, well, Citrus College should have lost by 50, yet we held them to only a 6-point margin.
But for me, that says a lot. They do have that.
They still win.
Similar opponent, but Riverside destroyed them, and Ventura College lost to them. So it does say a lot to me as far as what Ventura will bring to the house here at Wheelock Stadium next week.
This is a ball club that held one of the best overall running yards per carry teams in the National Central Conference to only 1 yard a pop. This was a phenomenal effort, and before we get going, I would like to get everyone caught up on NCAA scores. It was
let's do that.
It was a great week from the college football ranks. We'll get you scores in a matter of moments, but boy, that game against Ventura is going to be phenomenal. Other notes real quick before we wrap it up from next week's ball game. I would like to mention that the Tigers are facing